Mamta, as you said, value like centering humanity, right? And this really gives us the opportunity to do that in some critical ways. And like we know, even performative of how do we take a land acknowledgement,
Yeah, yeah.
right, and have it like be meaningful? How do we learn from it? How do we like connect it with Indigenous communities, right? And so many things can start out feeling performative,
Yeah.
and then what is our intention to make it sustainable, make it impactful, and it is how do we get back to that like humanity centered, value centered space.
Hello, and welcome to Student Affairs Now. I'm your co-host, Keith Edwards, joined today by my co-host, Mamta Akapati. Today, we're discussing the politicization, which is a hard word to say, of diversity, equity, inclusion, and belonging work, and how campus leaders can lead through the shifting landscape with integrity and effectiveness. We are joined by three incredible leaders with decades of experience on these topics who have worked with hundreds of campuses on these issues. I'm really glad to have all of them here and really looking forward to this conversation for all of our sake and for my own learning as well. Student Affairs Now is the premier podcast and online learning community for thousands of us who work in, alongside, or adjacent to the field of higher education and student affairs. We release new episodes every week on Wednesdays. Find details about this episode or browse our archives at studentaffairsnow.com. This episode is sponsored by Evolve. Evolve empowers higher ed leaders to lead with and through perilous times by releasing fear, gaining courage, and taking action through an executive coaching program, including individual and group coaching, and an intentionally designed and curated curriculum to maximize impact. And Huron's education and research experts help institutions transform their strategy, operations, technology, and culture to foster innovation, financial health, and student success. As I mentioned, I'm your co-host, Keith Edwards. My pronouns are he, him, his. I'm a speaker, author, and coach, empowering exceptional higher ed leadership for better tomorrows for us all through leadership, learning, and equity. You can find out more about me at keithedwards.com. And I'm recording this from my home in Minneapolis, Minnesota, which is at the intersections of the current and ancestral homelands of both the Dakota and the Ojibwe peoples.
Hello, friends. I'm Mamta Akapati. It's great to be in community with all of you for this important conversation today. My pronouns are she, her, hers, and I am joining you all from Austin, Texas. Austin, Texas is situated on the unceded ancestral homeland of the Humanos, Coahuiltecan, Comanche, Lipan Apache, and Tonkawa peoples. And without further ado, let's get into our conversation for today. So, friends, if we can get started with introductions, feel free, please introduce yourselves and share a bit about yourself, your career, and your connection to our conversation. And let's get started with Jamie.
Excellent. Thank you. Hello, friends. So good to see you all and delighted to be here with you today. I'm Jamie Washington. My pronouns are he, him, and his, and I am joining you from the unceded lands of the Piscataway Conoy Tribal Nations here in the Baltimore, Washington area. I serve as the president of the Washington Consulting Group and the president and co-founder of the Social Justice Training Institute, and excited to be here in this conversation with you all today. Becky?
Hello, Dr. Becky Martinez, she, her, and hers. And I am joining you from Hemet, California, so very southeast California, on the situated lands of the Cahuilla and Luiseño people, and land, right, and air, and everything that that involves. I am the president of Infinity Martinez Consulting. I'm also a faculty member with the Social Justice Training Institute. As part of the next gen faculty is Jamie and the founders will soon sit down. I get to be part of this space. I'm excited in this conversation with us here on the screen and with folks listening. Sam.
Thank you. My name is Sam Offer, pronouns he, him, his, and I am also joining you all from the city of Baltimore, where the ancestral homelands of the Piscataway tribe. I am vice president of the Washington Consulting Group and faculty with the Social Justice Training Institute as well. And I think there are so many identities that is with me today as we are in this conversation today. And I'm excited about what we get to do today as a group in this conversation. Yes.
Awesome. Well, we're so excited to have you all here and for this conversation. I think it's obvious to all of our folks who are listening that there's been a shift in the focus and the tone and the framing around diversity, equity, inclusion, justice, belonging, all of those terms. You all have been working with institutions and institution leaders, folks who you're working with now, folks who you've been working with over a long period of time. As we see this politicization and this backlash, I'm super curious how you see institutions and institution leaders navigating this politicization, which is, I don't know why it's so hard for me, the politicization, the pushback, that's so much easier around diversity, equity, and inclusion work. Jamie, do you want to kick us off here?
Sure, I will kick us off here. And I first want to start, again, not only thanking Student Affairs Now for hosting this conversation, but thanking all of you, not only who are joining us, but who are joining us live, but who will join us at any point in which you will connect to this conversation. I want to start with appreciation for your labor, for the work that you've done, the work that you are doing, and the work that you are navigating in this moment. It is a challenging moment, but I want us to experience this moment in the context of culture change. And so that there has been amazing work done over the last 50, 60 years in American higher education around this whole notion of diversity, equity, inclusion, and belonging, creating access for those who did not have access. Higher education is the great equalizer that we understand and experience in our country, and the opportunities that are provided for higher education is a very powerful opportunity moment. And so I share that because, again, as we think about what's happening, that if you think about what we have been able to do in these last 50, 60 years, is we've been able to invite folks into some information, some truth, some understanding about not only themselves, but about the history of our country and our world that folks did not have access to. The very notion that we are engaging this conversation with our pronouns, our land acknowledgments, these all speak to the progress of all of us mattering over these last, that we've come to be more conscious about how all of us matter and in the ways in which we have been invisibilized, right? And so it's been very important for us to acknowledge that what we are experiencing now is backlash to the great work that has been done, right? It's just, and so there has been, and again, we've been through several cycles of it, there has been no culture change without resistance, right? And pushback. And so I want us to just hold this and situate this in the good work that has been done. And so, yes, lots of institutions are struggling. They're trying to figure out what to do. Names are being changed, offices are being shut down, positions are being lost, and the pushback, the backlash, the politicization has shown up in ways that are to put us in a frenzy, right? To overwhelm us with expectations, starting from things that happened even before the last election, but particularly solidifying with the Valentine's Day Dear Colleague letter. And from that place, folks have been in reaction mostly. I'm happy to see us moving into response in a different way, but there's been a lot of reaction around what has happened. And so it impacts the programming and it's impacting the staff, who's there. It's impacted, again, folks navigating in this way of fear. So there's a culture of fear around DEIB right now that has us backing away from or not fully living into our stated values, right? So as we state our values, not only as a country, but as institutions around all of our students mattering and so on, it's been a space where folks have felt like we've got to protect ourselves and not necessarily focus on the values for which we came to the work. Becky. So your thought? Yeah.
You know, Jamie, thanks for grounding in the culture change piece. And I want us to remember that while this moment is intense, like we have
Mhm.
experienced intense moments, right? This is at a different level. And as I think about the last 60 years or so with DE&I and how it's evolved and, you know, where we've been focused and where we haven't focused, like we have lessons that we've learned that we can bring forth in dealing with the pushback, dealing with the resistance, um, dealing with how people feel, how they're reacting. So I think that that is a piece as we navigate to remember the lessons that we've learned in these last 60 years.
Mhm.
Because some of it isn't new. It may
Mhm.
be new for some folks, and it may
Mhm.
feel new for some folks. And there's other folks like, okay, here we go. Here we go again. It just looks and feels, and the outfit's a little different. And how do we continue to move forward?
Mhm.
That's what
Mhm.
I would add. Yeah.
Mhm.
If I can, I think
Mhm.
what popped for me right here is that we also name that we have been challenged at ourselves as
Mhm.
folks who do this work,
Mhm.
right?
Mhm.
And even though we're having this conversation, we've been in those places where we've sat in fear, where we've had to go back to our own values and recenter ourselves. And so what we're offering here is something that we have to do and that
Mhm.
we continue to do as we're in this process,
Mhm.
as we're continuing moving forward. Yeah.
Mhm. Mhm.
Yeah,
Mhm.
I love that framing about this is a sign of progress, this pushback and the backlash. That's really helpful framing and the
Mhm.
longer view of time. One of my favorite podcast hosts, Krista Tippett from On Being, is always talking about the challenges of the time, which to me seem sort of overwhelming.
Sure.
She always talks about it as in this moment, and that's just that language of in this
Right.
moment gives me, oh, there's a bigger perspective, there's a longer view, and I find that so helpful.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was going to add that there's a wonderful piece again as folks are looking at how some of this is playing out. The Chronicle just did a very powerful piece around the DEI dilemma. There's a focused piece that speaks beautifully to here's some of the things that are happening. Here's some of the ways that institutions are responding. So if you're looking again for a piece to share with your faculty or share with your staff, there's some really good, a really great professional development opportunity through just some of the writing that's in that document. Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I think about what the three of y'all are kind of inviting us to think about, and it's a there has been this. We've had moments of time and resistance. That's constant in a lot of ways, and just as resistance evolves, the way that we recenter needs to evolve. And I think we're kind of sitting in this evolutionary moment of how we choose to kind of center one another's humanity with each other. Um, but in that recentering, I would love to hear from y'all. What do you think in this moment? What does it look like to move from a, what others may reference as a performative diversity, equity, inclusion, and belonging approach to a more embedded, sustainable practice?
Yeah, Mamta, as you said, value like centering humanity, right? And this really gives us the opportunity to do that in some critical ways. And like we know, even performative of how do we take a land acknowledgement,
Yeah, yeah.
right? And have it like be meaningful? How do we learn from it? How do we like connect it with Indigenous communities, right? And so many things can start out feeling performative.
Yeah.
And then what is our intention to make it sustainable, make it impactful? And it is how do we get back to that like humanity centered, value centered space? So while this moment just feels rough, how do we like this is an invitation to how do we have it be sustainable? What are our values? How are we being transparent? How are we communicating? How are we being in the space of accountability? Like what are we doing with our data, right? Because oftentimes we get lots of data, but like really what are we doing in it, like for 6 months and a year out and 5 years out? What is our long term? What is our short term? I think some of the other things is we're needing to have some really hard conversations. Like we're needing to like recenter a courageous leadership. Like, what is a courageous conversation? What are the hard questions that we're engaging in? As we think about like, who do we want to be now? Who can we be now? And what are we willing to do? And what are we willing to compromise?
Yeah.
Like getting out of that perfection space, I think, is really important.
Yes.
And understanding the context, right? Depending upon, where an institution is located, I think really is important in the sustainable space. Who is your leadership? Who is your board? What state? What are you really paying attention to and wanting and needing? So those will be some of the things that, how do we have it stick? How do we have it more than, Keith, how do we have it be more than this moment? Right.
Yeah. I think, Becky, as you're naming, and the question for me, this notion that what DEIB has been, right? We in these last 5 years, we know after the murder of George Floyd and Breonna Taylor and Ahmaud Arbery and all the things that happened in the resurgence of the Black Lives Matter movement and all the work around trans lives mattering and so on, and Standing Rock, all the things that's happened, right, in this space to really invite us into, was that just performative? Or is this about what we really care about, right? And what really matters? And I was in a conversation with Dr. Carmen Rivera last week, and she was talking with me about this whole notion that this value-centered place where many of us who are on this or might be even listening, are really attached to the DEIB being the right thing to do, right? Is going to be our downfall, right? In the context of higher education. If we hang our hats only on that, and if we hang our hats on people not doing that being wrong or not being focused in that way, being not the good people, then we're in trouble. It is so critical that we understand, yes, that is a value position that our institutions have named and said they hold, but that's not the reason that we need to be doing this work, right? That we need to be preparing the next generation of leaders, and creating campus environments where people can see themselves reflected in the faculty and the staff that are hired and so on, that we are addressing the issues of the world where there are clear health disparities and education disparities and problems within our prison systems and so many places in which, if the folks that are coming through the four walls of higher education are not going out with an understanding how their identities matter and the identities of others matter and the histories matter, so that we understand how we got to the places, then we set ourselves up. And so that what I have been talking with institutions about is, what's the business case for this work? What does this have to do with the business of higher education, right? And yes, we get to hold that it happens to be the right thing from our value position. And I wouldn't even say that from the value position of some of the pushback and resistance, that they would be in disagreement with it. It is simply some of the way that we move about the work and the way that we engage the work. They might have us have that conversation differently, or do that differently. So I would say that we want to pay attention to, in this moment, how we're holding the value proposition and the rightness, and how we're making people wrong if they don't see it or hold it in the same way that we do.
And that's a courageous conversation.
Yes.
Right. And what we know, it is also a messy conversation. Right. And often we don't want to step into the mess. Right. And so it's inviting us to really to pull the curtains down, to dig in deeper, to shovel up some stuff, to get ourselves dirty, to have this conversation that will have it go from a performative place into a sustainable place, right? And I love that Dr. Carmen Rivera brought that in, right? And that we get to hold that as we're having these conversations. How do we move from this just valued place into deeper conversations about the institution?
It reminds me of the notion that would you rather be right or would you rather be effective? And I really like to be right. And it gets in the way of my ability to be effective. And I think what you're reminding us is let's focus less on being right. Let's focus on what's going to be effective, what's going to create change, what's going to create growth, well, maybe even protect some of these things.
And I think that lots of the work that particularly that we one of the foundations of the Social Justice Training Institute and Washington Consulting Group and Infinity Consulting is about moving us beyond being right to being effective. It is moving us beyond either or thinking, inviting us into that and inviting us into considering what our investment is in a particular position and how that investment can get in the way of the overall vision that we're trying to achieve and trying to create spaces where we all matter. Yeah, that's part of the tension. This whole notion that this DEIB is about and for minoritized people is a misnomer. It's not accurate, right? It is about preparing all of us to live and be effective in the world.
I think the way that we, one of my learnings, and I attribute this to Vernon Wall, another educator, I think, as we're all in a relationship, and it came through SJTI, so this may not have directly, but I heard it from him, this idea of what does everyone deserve and what does no one deserve, the parameters of those, of that conversation. As I'm hearing y'all speak, though, y'all, I have to say, and as a former Multicultural Center staff professional, a DEIB professional, I think back at ways that I might do my work differently. I mean, if I'm being very vulnerable, how I would take care of myself differently. And the only thing that keeps going on in my head right now is you're not going to program or workshop your way out of this. This is not like, I think if there's another, there's a universe of lessons I'm learning as an educator, and the workshops and programs are great, but that's not this messy work, Sam, that you were referencing, right? And so I want to that learning was just sunk in with me. And so as I think about what our colleagues, our diversity, equity, inclusion, and belonging colleagues are experiencing right now and what's being asked of them, what does protecting their well-being look like? Whether it's collaborators with them on campus, whether it's we're members of that same, functional area collective, what does that look like right now?
Yeah, and what a loaded question, right? Because we could spend the rest of this time right there, right? And I want to offer us three things that I feel like our DEIB professionals are being asked of right now. And one is, as Jamie talked about, appreciating the labor that has gone into the work that has been done around DEIB. They're being asked to stop laboring, right? And not to do what they've been called to do or what they've been even hired to do, right? Many of them came into this work because doing their undergrad studies, they felt and experienced things that were needed, that was lacking, that wasn't there, and they wanted to create a space that was better, right? And so one of the things that is being asked of them right now is to not to do that, to show up at work doing something, but don't do that, right? Do something, but don't do that. The other thing that I think they've been asked to do is to navigate what's going on in their own bodies while taking care of other individuals, right? Whether that's students, whether that's members who hired them, whether that is the president, right? They've been asked to do all of those things, but to do it without really focusing on what's happening in their own bodies, physically, emotionally. And we know when people are in places where they're being challenged, it can be hard on their bodies physically, it can be hard on them mentally, it can show up in all kinds of ways. And so I think many of our DEIB professionals have been asked to continue to take care of the people that you're supposed to take care of without saying you're taking care of them. Right? So do it, but don't tell nobody you're doing it, right? And you can't say this out loud. And we know what happens when we can't speak it, right? Then we can't have the community to support us in the ways that we need it to be done, right? And so I think it's important that we're holding that. And then thirdly, as I think about the work that we do with Martinez Infinity, with the Washington Consulting Group, with other DEIB professionals, this time of the year is the time of the year that we set up and begin to help institutions and students to be able to engage the dynamics of diversity, equity, and inclusion, right? And without that happening,
Right.
we are leaving our institutions, our students in a bad way, right? And I know I was just recently in at UC Davis, right? I was just out there in California, warm weather, yay, right? And what I saw was that there was just such a need on the looks of the students' face and the leaders who brought us in for folks who do this work to be at the table to continue to do it, right? Not everywhere is that being seen because lots of people, as Jamie named from the beginning, are in fear and are willing to step across the lines, to step across the boundaries, to bring it in. But I saw the need there. And I think one of the things that we professionals are being asked to do is not to do what matters to them and not to do what the institution needs so that the institution can survive, because without them, the institution doesn't know how to do it.
Yeah.
Very powerful.
And yeah, go ahead, Becky. I heard. Yeah.
Yeah. So, I think what is important in this moment, and I think so many moments before this, and Mom and I, you've had conversations of like, how are we creating our boundaries?
Yeah.
Right. So like, how are, supervisors role modeling boundaries? How are we taking care of ourselves? Right. Dr. Sarah Furr, her dissertation was on social justice fatigue. Right. So now we can really pay attention to, our bodies. Am I fatigued? How am I taking time and space? How do I ask for that? How do I role model that for students? My identities are being targeted. How do I take care of myself? And that is, I think, really hard for student affairs practitioners already, because we're so used to taking care of everybody else. And so it's like, oh, like I matter in this equation. And that's not selfish at all. Like that is selfless. And I'm role modeling that for students and other staff and faculty and people at the institution. Because if I'm literally sick, I cannot do my job. Right. And if I am not grounded, like we can't do our jobs. And so how are we creating space for ourselves in this emotional, spiritual, physical way? Because well-being is so important. And in the attack, I think it's even more important, right? Like we can give to our institutions, our campuses, our structures in a more like whole space as we are able to protect our well-being. Also, like let's name our needs. Like this is what I need, and that is new for so many of us. But I think like let's put that on the list also of ways to protect ourselves.
Well, and again, right there, Becky and Sam, as you're naming, as we talk about the what's being asked, and then how do we take care of this whole notion of well-being. So there's a energy in the country right now around well-being, right? And we know that our counseling centers and I'm working with counseling centers and it's health centers, and well-being is mattering. The tension that we're in right now with this pushback around DEIB is we can't talk about why we unwell, right?
Right.
And where the unwellness is happening from. And so again, if you can't name my pain is a race pain, my injury is gender identity based, right? If I can't talk about where that's come from and there's not an opportunity to diagnose the pain, what the history is of that pain, so that then we can get the right prescription to help us move through that pain, then we remain in pain. Right. And so it's the tension around what we can say and what we can't say, that's what staff are navigating. And if I say this word, is it going to be wrong? Many institutions, many DEIB professionals are and faculty, right, are having their curriculums, having their syllabus, having their things scrutinized around language and what words you can say. And we can get into the whole notion, well, let's not get all hung up in the words. Well, that's true, and words matter. That word means something, right? And so having to again navigate without saying the thing takes a whole lot of energy in different ways. And again, as Sam and Becky and I were talking about this, it's not just those who have DEIB in their title or did, right? Or taught the DEIB related courses, right? So that where we talk about academic freedom and the challenges around that, but it's the people, right? And I say, just because you say there's only two genders, don't mean non-binary people left the world, right? And they're still in the room, right? And they're still on the campus, and they're still on the faculty and the staff. This is so you take your pronouns off of your emails. What? Just because that's named doesn't make people go away. And so how people are navigating in these spaces where they're trying, there are attempts because of risk aversion and so on to erase them is a part of that challenge, right? And so they're being asked to navigate and manage in those spaces, sometimes with a level of consciousness from one-ups and supervisors and institutional leadership, and sometimes not, with no level of consciousness around what that actually means and what that actually takes to show up every day with the people. Yeah.
Yeah, it's hard to call a thing.
Yeah, that's right.
You can't say a thing.
That's right. Really is.
It's hard to do that.
Yeah.
And I feel myself taking a bunch of deep breaths as like I'm hearing all of this.
I'm with you.
Yeah.
Well, what's with me is being reminded as you're talking about gender identity, Jamie, how I hear so many people say that trans people aren't real and they're to blame for all our problems. It's a little hard thing to get around, and
right.
We can't talk about racism because it doesn't exist. It's done and it's over. While still really talking about other forms of identity that people want to focus in on. Anything more about DEIB professionals and their well-being before we move on in the conversation?
Well, I guess the only thing that I would add is, and so what are the spaces that are being created to have this conversation, right?
Yeah.
So can the DEIB professionals and those adjacent, right, have the retreat or have the meeting, or are we not even able to come together to talk about what the struggle does? It have to, so is that institutionally supported and sanctioned? Yes, we are doing our own meetings after the meeting, meetings before the meeting, figuring out where we're going to go for happy hour and all those kinds of things. But how are our institutions showing up in the institution responsibility to recognize how this dynamic is impacting its employees and its students and its staff, right? And its faculty. So what are we doing intentionally to say we recognize this, we get this, we see this as a thing. We may not even know how to address or support all of it, but we know that it is taking psychological and emotional labor and physical labor to kind of try to stay in it. And so, what's our agency and our responsibility to move forward? Part of the tension is so when we've got the senior leader in student affairs or DEI or diversity and inclusion, who are the only people who are saying that, or the people who have to be the first to say that, right? We again add additional labor to them, right? And then when those folks are navigating being the only people at the table, but those who are under them expect them, right, to show up in a particular way, then there is another dynamic that's at play that is burning out and that is doing harm to those of us who have risen to positions of at seats at the table where we could represent and we could use our voice, but when our voices are the only ones that are being raising the issues, and we're having meetings after the meeting with our colleagues who say, well, that this makes really good sense. I don't know what we're gonna do, but at the meeting, crickets. I'm by myself, right? I'm the only one who's saying it. It becomes an extra tax, extra labor. So
one of the things that I've seen some campuses do, or they're talking more about, are communities of care, right? And so how are they intentionally setting up communities of care, whether that, and not calling it affinity groups, right? But it's like, how are we doing these communities of care beyond just this kind of this surface level way of taking care of each other?
Yeah.
I think, and this again, as we've been reminded when we open this conversation, that this is what this conversation looks like today, but it's the same conversation that's been happening over the arc of time as it relates to, how we consider the condition of people. I'd be remiss if I didn't name, there are collaborating partners to DEIB professionals and colleagues, and we have the opportunity to name the work the DEIB colleagues do is universal care work, right? And I want to be very clear when I say that, to say that DEIB colleagues are among the best generalists you can have around student care, support, and dignity. So to not lift up that generalist impact, particularly in the realm of student success, is a missed opportunity, right? When we have a breadth of points of view at the table, then we're able to accomplish those institutional values and goals. So I think that there is an opportunity for us to bring people in differently, right? And again, this is also not a unique reflection that I'm offering here, but this is the space to say, okay, if we're going to accomplish our shared goals around the student experience and student success, then we want our best generalists at the table so that we can be sure that we have encompassed the breadth of the students on our campus, or faculty and staff. So same ways in which we kind of make those decisions. So
and how are we creating the structure for those best, right? Like tools, development, skills, like not just bringing them there, but bringing them in, keeping them there, developing them. Because what often happens is we just bring them in and that's it.
Yeah.
Right. And so like, how do we do that differently?
Yeah. I think this is so helpful because I hear you all providing us some really great framing and context, but also in these last couple of minutes, we've heard some really great language to use, like communities of care and focusing on student success and what does well-being for all look like, that I think can be really tools that we can use to be strategic about going through this. One of the challenges I think that as I talk to higher ed leaders is we talked before about focusing not on being right, but about being effective and being strategic. And I hear these leaders say, I'm worried about media scrutiny, donor scrutiny, federal government scrutiny, and all of my emails being FOIA'd and gone through for the magic words, right? And so wanting to be really thoughtful and really strategic and really careful. On the other end of things, they're being told by their colleagues and that report to them and students, you're not doing enough, right? So if I do anything, it's too much. And if I do something, it's never going to be enough. And this real squeeze between these external constituents and some of the internal, sometimes that's staff, and a lot of times that's students. So I'd love to turn our attention to students. I think you've all mentioned seeing students. Sam was speaking to seeing the look on students' faces and the yearning and the need they have for some of this and having to be really thoughtful about how we do that. And I think a lot of this has been instigated as we look at the 60-year history, not by consultants like some of us, not by necessarily faculty and staff always, but a lot of times it's been by students
That's right.
saying, we have this need, we won't settle for this, we demand this, we're
That's
pushing
right.
for this.
That's right.
And so, how do you suggest in this crossroad with all this pushback and being squeezed on both ends, how do you suggest that institutions and institutional leaders listen to and respond to students who are making demands around some of these issues? Because it seems more complex than ever.
Yeah, it is, and uh, I'm here to say I was one of those students that has me in this space today because I was one of them students that said, "Oh hell to the no." Whoops, did I cuss? But oh, is that what? I'll keep that one good. And so as we look today in the tension, right? And so I think that part of what's happening and that we have to pay attention is not avoiding, right? And not running away from and not trying to silence. Again, that's part of the struggle with, I think, some of our DEIB professionals by title and those who have served, kind of that need and desire on our campuses is the tension around how do I continue to support the students and the concerns. So we are just starting our academic year 25-26, and a lot happened over the summer and didn't have. So we had this frenzy of things that are happening. Some things got names of events got shifted. The emoji, graduation ceremony, the Black student graduation, the Latinx student graduation, the Pride graduation. The names got changed and everything. We got to the end of the semester, and now we're coming back. And I think that what's going to happen and what we have to pay attention to is students coming back to their offices being gone, right? Or their offices being renamed and not knowing where is so and so.
And there are people being
repositioned.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah,
Yep.
people, yeah, all of those things. And this whole notion of, do we not matter here? Is this place not still ours? And I think that we have to be willing to be in the conversation and the tension, right? We have to welcome that. We have to invite space for that, so that students can know that we as an institution are committed to these things. We are struggling to figure out how we do that and this, right? We welcome your wisdom and your brilliance as we figure this out in this space, because it's not a space that we absolutely have an easy answer, and we don't. We are navigating with this is what we're managing, right? This is what we're managing, and we're also so when we've got competing values, right, that are at play, how do we kind of move through that together, but also pay attention to what can we do? How can we support? How can we continue to show up? What are the things that we do need? I think Sam was saying something about, or Becky, naming your needs. And how do we do that in this climate where things are tenuous and stressful? And one of the things that I saw early on was when some of the early institutions were being hit with, losing funding and all the things, that lots of us were doing oh my gosh, isn't that awful? Let me send a note to the people that I know there and let them know we're thinking about them. Like, well, that's a thing. How about us doing some coalition,
Yeah.
How about us not showing up here as this is us? What are the institutional leaders in your area doing? What are the folks who are not necessarily on the campus but adjacent, the community collaborators that are committed to these things doing? And so, how do we make sure that our students are connected in those ways? As well as, so the students down here at this HBCU are connected to the students at the community college and the students. This is a moment of opportunity for us not to go it alone, right? For us to realize that we are stronger together, and that's how we get to support our students in this way. Yeah,
As we model that, the students see it,
that's right.
right?
Yeah,
And then they start to take on
yeah.
what they see us modeling, right? And so it's so important that we are modeling this collaboration in this way, having these conversations. And the other thing for me too, Becky named the community of care. And the other thing I want to offer us too is that some of these conversations we just have to have one-on-one. It is a little more work. It is a little more work with our students to hear them and to give them space where they feel comfortable to say what they are holding in their body, in their energy, in their mind, right? And so some of that might require a one-on-one, right? And a community of care. And that we're doing some of this with ourselves because it starts with ourselves first. If we're not having these conversations, then we're not building the capacity to engage our students as well.
Yeah. And how are we like role modeling vulnerability?
Yep.
Right. I think, as we are listening to student demands, as we're responding, how are we also being vulnerable with students about what's going on with us? Right. It's about the impact, because many times it can be one way, and like, how do we show up as vulnerable leaders? I think that's really important. It doesn't mean that we gotta it's not a therapy session to work our stuff.
Yeah, right.
Right. But it is a space to show that we're human and
That's right.
we can be vulnerable in this moment.
Mm-hmm.
And I think then we can look at the how are we responding and listening to demands. It is how are we communicating with students? How are we being transparent with students? We know that information continues to change. And so in this space of taking care of students or student demands, we need to be able to supply them with the information that we have. Yeah.
And I mean, go ahead.
Please.
Well, I was going to say, I'm hearing again a lot of what y'all are talking about, and this work is not, it's not efficient work. And in our professions and lots of industries, right? This efficiencies, right? Sam, the one-on-one conversation is not efficient. Communities of care, it's not efficient. Being in the messy is not efficient. And I think there is a return of a practice that's not going to be grounded in perfection. And again, I call it the programs with great outcomes, right? It's the work is just going to have to look a lot more organic. And I guess what I'm hearing you all describe.
Just be more real, right?
Yes.
This is fantastic, and we are running out of time. So this podcast is called Student Affairs Now. We always like to end by asking, what are you thinking, troubling, or pondering now? So we'd love to hear that from each of you. And also, I know you wanted to share some about how we can live our values. I also know that folks are going to be really interested in how they might be able to work with you as leaders and institutions. And so if you can also share where they can reach out to you, that would be great. So a good podcast host rule is don't ask more than one question at once, and I just asked three. Over to you, Becky.
Okay, which one do I need to answer first? So Becky Martinez, infinitymartinez.com is where you can find me. Dr. Becky Martinez on Blue Sky and on Instagram and in LinkedIn. As we leave you, I just want folks to think about what is the commitment to consistent learning, right? And so how am I learning in all different ways? What am I reading? What am I watching? What am I having conversations in? And how do we not bombard ourselves with all of the intake, but create boundaries in the learning space? And as Jamie said, let's build coalitions. This is the opportunity for us to be in this together and not be siloed and to reach out And so coalition building is going to be really important for us to get through this moment and all of the other ones to follow.
Mhm. Yeah.
Great. You did it. You did it. Sam, over to you. What are you thinking, troubling, or pondering now? Where can folks connect with you? And how can we live our values?
Yes. So again, Sam Offer, and I can be emailed at sam.offer@comcast.net. You can find me on Instagram at Sam Ray, and Sam Offer at on Facebook. And I just want to appreciate this conversation. It's been
Mhm.
just absolutely amazing. And thank you all for having us here. And I just want to leave this at we talked already about protecting and uplifting DEIB practitioners, both those who are titled and those who are just doing the work because they feel like that's what they've been called to do, right? And so I want to leave us that we have to advocate for their compensation, prioritize their wellness, and build a culture. And Jamie talked about this, building a culture of shared responsibility.
That's it. That's
And
it.
and and
That's
and
it.
if I was going to put that simple, I would say we just need to affirm that their work is not a side task, but a core organizational function.
Mhm.
It is to create systems of accountability where their insights and values are noticed, seen, respected, their labor is sustainable, and their leadership is empowered to guide meaningful, lasting change.
Mhm. Mhm. Well, I'll jump in here because Becky and Sam have really, really said it for me. Again, so you can reach me at dr.jamiewashington at comcast.net or the Washington Consulting Group .net if you are looking for us via the web. You can also reach us at sjti.org. And as we talk about care, for all of those SJTI alums out there, we've got a renewal coming up. We want you to join us for the renewal in Santa Fe in February, and our next institute, which is a space again for renewal and strength. The next institute is will be in June, likely in Baltimore, but stay tuned for that information that'll be coming out soon. I just want to, again, appreciate the energy, the work, what's happening right now, reminding us again of the great work that's being done, that has been done, and to understand that this is a part of the culture change process. And so while we might feel like we are moving backwards in some ways, it is important for us to know that in order to continue this train moving in the way of all of us mattering and valuing, we have to navigate some of the tension that we're in right now. So I would say to you, use your voice, right? So pay attention to your own agency and when you're simply using your voice, and be aware of when you lose it, right? So when have I left a meeting or a situation where I wanted to say something, but I remained silent? I invite you to pay attention to that space, not from a place of judgment, but from a place to do your work. And finally, that you ground this in simply telling the truth and from a place of love. I'm going to use the L word, yes, love. There is a love of humanity that is grounding our work and that is grounding why we're in this space doing this. And it is for all of us. And unapologetically, we believe that all of us matter, and we want to create a world where that's the lived reality.
Awesome. Mamta, you want to get in on this goodness too?
Well, I think it's just really meaningful. Want to add gratitude for Becky, Jamie, and Sam. Your wisdom, just it was exactly what I know I needed today. So I'm grateful for how our colleagues experience this podcast. I know that it will be a gift for them as well. You all have kind of sparked a thinking for me about what, if we were doing this differently, not like let me tweak something, but if I'm radically doing this differently, what would it look like if we held on to each other to create a culture of affection, right? That's
Mhm.
something 100% of people can agree upon. So Jamie, your words about holding on to love really impacted me in a positive way. Um, yeah, holding on to each other. So I think our work right now is not about being right. It's about holding on to each other. And if in order to do that, then we have to shift our energy to what it means to hold on to each other. And I
Mm,
would also
mm.
argue let go if there's spaces where it's causing harm.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Very good.
Beautiful, beautiful. I would add a ditto to a lot of that, Mamta. I'll also just add, I'm really leaving this conversation feeling inspired, motivated. I think the context and the framing has been really inspiring for me and also empowered. I feel like I'm leaving here with a lot of language, a lot of tools, a lot of skills, to go forward and do good work in the world. And so I really
Thank you.
appreciated that. As Mamta said, I needed this too. So thank you all very much. I really appreciate that. You've all been fantastic, and the conversation has been terrific, and we hope this serves our listeners. And I want to thank all three of you and four of you for your leadership in this space. I have learned from each and every one of you and welcomed this opportunity today to continue to learn from you. So thank you all so very much. I also want to thank our sponsors of today's episode, Evolve and Huron. Higher ed leaders, as we've talked about, are facing unprecedented challenges, uncertainty, and attacks. Many are understandably feeling overwhelmed and near burnout, yet yearning to make a powerful difference for students, their organizations, and all of us. Evolve is a program I lead along with my colleagues, Drs. Brian Arau and Don Lee, who I'm sure will be listening to this. It's an executive coaching program to empower leaders like you to release fear, gain courage, and take transformative action to unleash your leadership for social change. It's a three-month coaching program
Mhm.
for individual and group coaching, as well as intentional and curated curriculum to maximize the impact for the busiest of senior leaders. You can visit us or join our next cohort or consider Evolve for your senior leadership team. And Huron collaborates with colleges and universities to create sound strategies, optimize operations, and accelerate digital transformation. By embracing diverse perspectives, encouraging new ideas, and challenging the status quo, Huron promotes institutional resilience and higher education. For more information, visit them at go.hcg.com/now. As always, a huge shout out to our producer, Natalie Ambrosi, who does all the behind the scenes work to make all of us look and sound good. And we love the support of you, our audience, for these important conversations. You can really help us reach even more folks by subscribing to the podcast on YouTube or to our weekly newsletter, where you get the newest episode every Wednesday morning. And if you want to leave us a 5-star review in various places, it really helps. And also share these episodes. Each share helps this reach even more folks, which is really, really helpful. Thanks again to our fabulous guest today and my co-host, Mamta Akapati. Thank you all for being here. And to our listeners, all you watching and listening, make it a great week. Thank you all.